and try and get used to this green screen. Hello and welcome to the Car Nerd Talks, where today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite model toys that I had when I was a kid, which is the Bugatti EB110. This was an incredible looking car, and it was designed not by Bugatti himself but by a guy who took the company over. And if it wasn't for him taking the company over, you may not have the Chiron and the VEYRON today, so very important. Before I jump into this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching today. Tune in every day where I'm going to have new content and try and get used to this green screen. So thank you so much for watching, and let's jump into it. So back in the pre-war era, Bugatti was infamous for coming up with incredible car designs and moving the whole way up until he had to he went bankrupt and the trademark went late in the 70s. Bugatti was producing some absolutely incredible cars, and his thing was no budget too big. He wanted to create cars that were just, incredibly advanced, and this is where the VEYRON thing comes from now. But this was really inspired by what the guy who would buy Bugatti did. So in 1987, Romano Artioli went and bought the trademark name for Bugatti. This guy was a massive entrepreneur in Italy at the time, and also had just an incredible group of friends, one of who was Ferruccio Lamborghini, and Ferruccio Lamborghini convinced him to buy the trademark, which he did in 1987. And he wanted to create a car that would hark back to what Artioli had created with Bugatti in the past, which is there is no money value that you can put on these things, and you just want to create the most advanced car at the time. So he, in 1988, started working with Marcello Gandini, and I've spoke about Gandini, I think 3 times in the past week, because he was a notorious car designer. And this would start out a little bit of bad luck for Gandini, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But in 1988, Gandini started working on designs for what would become the EB110. And if you're wondering what EB110 stands for, it is Artioli Bugatti 110, his 110th anniversary of life, even though he was dead. So while Marcello Gandini was working on the designs for this car, Artioli was working on a factory, and his factory was pretty incredible. It had a marble floor and didn't look anything like factories at the time, especially not one of a startup. So Gandini went about designing the car, and Gandini, if you aren't aware, produced a lot of cars for Alfa Romeo. He produced the Lamborghini Countach, and he produced a lot of other cars for a time, a lot of famous cars. So he went and he decided he was going to make this look something similar to the Countach, with a shovel nose, very stark angles, and big wide wheel arches at the back. And this incredible looking design was brought to the Bugatti team, and they hated it. They thought it looked absolutely terrible.
I hate it!
But Gandini refused to redesign the car, and then they went on to a guy called Giampaolo Benedini. And Giampaolo Benedini decided to basically take the overall design but soften up all the edges, get rid of the massive wheel arches, get rid of the pop-up headlamps, and overall just make it a much smoother looking design.
I like it!
And then they decided they were going to make this thing from carbon fibre. This had a carbon fibre monocoque chassis, as well as a carbon fibre body mixed with fiberglass. This was an incredibly light design, and something that hadn't been done before. Like, they went to a company that made aeroplane parts to do the carbon fibre monocoque chassis. So Bugatti, instead of deciding to build this car from a parts bin or starting with a Rover engine or something similar to every other manufacturer, they built everything from the ground up, and you can probably understand why this company eventually ran out of money. Now, going back to the design, Gandini, who basically got fired from this, also had a run of luck with the Diablo after this, where the exact same thing happened with Chrysler. So not a good time for Gandini. Now, as I said, Attiori wanted to build a car from the ground up, and this was something that not a lot of other people were doing, especially when it came to the engine. They decided to build a very light engine from the ground up and very tightly packed. They built the transmission into the sump, much like on the Mini, and this was a 3.5 litre V12. However, to make it more powerful than this, they added 4 turbos. So this was a quad turbo engine with 60 valves, and it produced 553 brake horsepower and 451 pound-feet of torque. Now that doesn't sound a lot for a car that would go on to be $500,000, but you have to remember that this was 1990 when they were producing this, so this was quite an incredibly fast car. It would perform incredibly fast as well, as I'll go on to now. The car had a performance as big as its style. So even though Gandini was gone, this thing looked incredible. The engine was incredible. They had built a 3.5 litre instead of a big 6 litre V12 like Lamborghini would have gone on to be pushing at the time. And they built this thing right. Because of the weight in this car, the power to weight ratio was incredible. So this car would do 0 to 60 in 3.14 seconds. To put that in perspective, a modern Tesla will do it in 2.9, and that is nearly 20 years after. Sorry, it's 30 years after. And this car would then go on to do 220 miles an hour. So an incredible feat of engineering at the time. Sadly, the result of all this was a very low product run. They were hoping for around 350 units during its lifetime. It only ever produced 140, about 20 of which were prototypes, so it's about 120 sales, which was not enough to keep the company running. Attiori was an incredible businessman, but he sunk, like Bugatti, everything he had into this car. And unfortunately, the whole company went bankrupt, owing about 60 million, which is not a lot of money compared to other car companies that go bankrupt, but it was enough to bankrupt the company. At the time, he had purchased Lotus, which unfortunately backfired on him. He had a great plan to use Lotus as his global distribution network. He also put a lot of money into the factory and a lot of money into design. And it was just unfortunate timing because the McLaren F1 was released around the same time and blew the figures of this out of the water. But this was a much better engineered car than any of those, and if you bought one today, you probably wouldn't have a lot of issues. So Attiori managed to do the thing that he wanted to do, which was create a car which spoke to Attiori Bugatti, and he did that. This was a beautiful design car with incredible performance and incredible engineering, and I don't think we should ever look down on someone trying to achieve a dream like that, because it's stunning. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you learned a little bit about the Bugatti EB110, and I really want one of these in my collection, as I'm sure you probably do now. And if you enjoy these videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And if you're reading this on Drive Tribe, drop me a link in the comments, or drop me something in the comments, or just say hello. That'd be great. Thank you so much for watching. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.